Hey, it's Alex from BoardGameCo, and we are finally covering the Age of Atlantis. The Age of Atlantis is by El Dorado Games, and it's one that I pushed off. I wasn't sure if I was going to do a dedicated video at first at all, and even when I was, I kept pushing it off because there's a lot to unwrap here, especially from a stance of someone like myself, someone who approaches Kickstarter, not just hey, I like it, I want to get it, but rather the value proposition. And there's a lot to unpack here, because sadly, El Dorado Games is most well known for the Island of El Dorado and the 3 subsequent prints of that game. They had the Island of El Dorado bringing in, 292,000. Then they had the expansion bringing in another 472,000. Another expansion bringing in another 378,000. This is a game that altogether has brought in over $1 million, and yet gets fairly panned. And more importantly, panned is a very harsh word. This is rated a 7 on BoardGameGeek, which is not bad. I have games well below a 7 that I do enjoy. Granted, they are the exception, but a 7 isn't a terrible game, not by a long shot. But where it gets panned from the stance of looking at Kickstarters with that value aspect, with how well will it hold up? Should you back it now, or should you wait to get it on the aftermarket dump? And that is where it gets tricky, because the Island of El Dorado is a game that really, really, really did not hold its value. This is a game where even if you got it in the first Kickstarter, even if you got it in the first Kickstarter at $49, this is a game that's selling on BoardGameGeek, on the marketplace, on eBay. This is a game that's selling for $15, $20, $35 on the high end. This is a game that really seems to be offloaded by a lot of people and being picked up for half the price you paid, half the price, sometimes less than what you would have paid on Kickstarter. And that offhand is, I walked into the Age of Atlantis with the understanding, with the assumption, not understanding, with the assumption that I'd be saying it's a hard pass. Why would you back a game where the most well-known game from that publisher is a game that goes for half its value? And again, not a terrible game. Overall, the reviews seem to be, it's okay. Aspects of it are fun, beautifully produced. But the game itself seems to be okay. Not the best. So why would you take a risk on the Age of Atlantis? Why would I take a risk on the Age of Atlantis? Now, to be clear, not fair, El Dorado Games does have other games that they have produced. They have Taco Fight, which I didn't look into just based on the name. Honestly, I'm a little prejudiced that way. They have the 3 El Dorado expansions like we see over here. And then additionally, they have Windward and Capone, but unfortunately, those 2 are not out yet, so it's very hard to establish what the market has done with those. So they have other games, but primarily they are known for the Island of El Dorado, and in the terms of looking at a Kickstarter from the degree of whether it will hold its value, that's not a good starting point. And yet here we are, talking about it. And if you watched my last video, my Kickstarter Roundup, I'll link to that. If you watch that, you already know that I'm backing this game. So why? What changed my mind? What happened? How in the world did I go from looking at a Kickstarter from a producer where the games don't hold their value to saying I'm in? What was my thought process? How did I approach it? What brought us here today? So let's cover the Age of Atlantis in brief, high level overview. I am not going into detail on this one. There is a lot to unpack here, and to be frank, there's only so much I understand myself. At its core, it's like it says up here, a competitive engine-building civilization game with a high degree of worker placement. And your workers, and there's interesting interweaving facets to this game, where El Dorado was to a certain extent panned for being a little too light, a little too simplistic, not enough interesting decisions to be made. If anything, the feedback Age of Atlantis is getting from playtesters, and it is on Tabletop Simulator, and they are engaging with a lot of people from the community for playtesters to continuously iterate on this game. If anything, the feedback is the furthest thing from that. It might be too complicated. There might be 2 aspects of it that are too interweaving. If you walked into this Kickstarter expecting something on the lighter side, this is not it. I've seen comparisons all over the spectrum from, this is like Food Chain Magnate and how you have to pursue certain things to combine things, and I love Food Chain Magnate. I've seen different aspects in terms of whether it's lighter, heavier. There are many people who seem to thoroughly enjoy the level of depth, decision, and balance this game has, while to be fair, at the same time, there are people who are concerned about that balance. But in terms of a light game, this is not a light game. This is a game where, we'll scroll down to over here, they have a great list of the various actions. You're going to lead your citizens, and your citizens have morale. For each action you take, they lose morale, and you have to keep them happy. You're going to slowly build your city, unleash myths, use those myths to attack intruders. Ultimately, you're worshipping Poseidon, and there is a degree of semi-co-op in the sense that you have to stop Poseidon, you have to stop Atlantis from being flooded in different sections of the city. there's a lot going on in this game, and there's a tech tree aspect. There are personal objectives, or I can't remember, there's a term, there's a specific thing they have, but can't recall the term. But there's a lot going on in this game, and yet only it's heavy strategy with a 4-page rulebook. Now I will note, I'm a drop worry on that, because with El Dorado they did make a small short rulebook, and there were people who were concerned that there wasn't enough, there wasn't enough clarity. They aimed for a short rulebook at the cost of clarity. So for what it's worth, I really hope, especially if the El Dorado, if you guys are watching this video at any point, I really hope you take that feedback to heart and ensure that's not the case with this rulebook. 4 pages is great. 4 pages is not great if people don't understand how to play the game. So there's a balance there. There is a lot going on in this game. So why am I backing it? So to begin with, offhand, I'm backing it because it's more complicated than the quest for the Island of El Dorado. Because it's more nuanced, because it's more complicated, because there's a lot more strategy going on in this game, and this is not being compared to some Catan variant, Catan offshoot that is lighter and accessible and a gateway game. This is the furthest thing from that. In fact, to the point that if you watch Rado's review, they have these strategy guides detailing how to play the game, because you might need those strategy guides to not feel lost in your first play. That is a level of depth I like. That's a level of depth I appreciate and can get behind. The problem with lighter games is not the problem with lighter games. I have no problem with lighter games. The problem with lighter games is lighter games on Kickstarter have a harder time holding their value. Lighter games, by their very nature, tend to be traded more often, tend to be sold more often. I did a video a while back covering the top 20 games BoardGameCo traded, and that's where BoardGameCo, we trade a lot of games. And the top 20 games, most of them were lighter games. Popular lighter games, but lighter games nonetheless. And the reason for that is because people pick up lighter games, but they don't have that staying power. They don't have that depth. And so a lighter game on Kickstarter, especially one that brought in $1 million and has this many copies in rotation, will be passed around a lot, and that can hurt its value. Heavier games tend to get passed around less, assuming they're good. Lighter games, good or not good, they get passed around a bit. And so why am I backing El Dorado? A question, not El Dorado, Age of Atlantis. A question I've asked a few times. So number one is the community engagement. If you pay attention to the level of community engagement El Dorado has with the community on tabletop, on both in Board Game Geek, on Tabletop Simulator, on Discord, there is a ton of community engagement, and they are heavily interacting with the community on ways to tweak, to iterate. If you look at the playtesters, there are certainly people who did not think the game was amazing. But so far, I've seen very few people who panned the game, and most people seem to really enjoy it. And there's the question of how much. Are we talking, 7, 8, 9, 10? But for the most part, it seems to be well enjoyed by the people playtesting the game. Granted, that's a smaller audience size than the number of people who will back this game, so you have to take that as a factor, as a point, but who knows? Maybe it won't be for you, maybe it won't be good in general. Maybe they have a small subset of loyal fans. And the loyal fan thing is interesting, because if you pay attention to El Dorado, if you pay attention to Age of Atlantis, for the most part, they have a strong overlap of the reviewers who are working with them. So for instance, Quackalope has been covering their Kickstarters for the past few Kickstarters. He's done a few of their content. And he loves this game. Whereas Island of El Dorado, he said it's a good game, he's happy to play with his family. Meaning, in other words, we have a hardcore dedicated fan of El Dorado games who loves this one, yet the other one thinks it's good, it's okay, it's good for the right situation. If you watch the Unfiltered Gamers review, watch the review, compare and contrast the reviews of Age of Atlantis versus Island of El Dorado. There is a strong difference in the degree of enthusiasm from someone who is promoting their game in both cases, doing a review for the game in both cases. But one is like, it's good, it's great, the right situation, or whatever. And the other is, this game's incredible, the artwork's incredible, I'm trying to think of negative statements. Seeing the difference in the opinion from the same people should give you context for not whether this game is good. That's not a guarantee in the slightest. But rather, this game is not the Island of El Dorado. It is certainly not the Island of El Dorado. Whether it's for you, can't say that. Whether it's for the general audience, can't say that. Whether it'll hold its value, there are no guarantees in life. But it certainly is a different game than the Island of El Dorado. I walked into this Kickstarter judging them because of one specific game, and that I have come to the firm conclusion, without any doubt in my mind, that it's not that other game in any way, shape, or form. It is a different beast. Still not a guarantee on whether it will hold its value, still not a guarantee on anything else, but my bias was pushed off to the side as soon as I established that. And also Rado, by the way. Rado did not cover the Island of El Dorado. I do not know if he didn't cover it because they didn't ask him to, or because he didn't like it, because Rado doesn't cover games he doesn't like. So I don't know that, but he certainly did seem to have a lot of positive things to say about Age of Atlantis. I am backing this game because I think it speaks to me. I think that from what I know about the game so far, I'm intrigued. It feels like a game that will be a great fit for my gaming group. Price point wise seems to be pretty reasonable. I'm surprised they're able to achieve this price point with what seems to be in the box. But one of the things they are known for, even on Island of El Dorado, is how beautifully produced their games are. So I'm not worried. I trust they'll be able to do it. I'm not too concerned. It's a good price point if this game is half the beast it seems to be. And it's worth noting that if you pay attention to their first Kickstarters for Island of El Dorado, the first copy was $49, and the next Kickstarter, it went up to $59 for the base game. So this is a company that does take that practice of charging more for a reprint. Because in terms of the risk-reward scenario here, it's basically as follows. If you don't back it, your risk is that it's a great game, people will like it, and you'll have to either pay market prices, which will be high if this is a great game, or you'll have to wait till the next Kickstarter, pay $10 more, and wait another whole year plus, and they probably will have a second Kickstarter if this game does well. That seems to be their modus operandi, so it probably will be available, but you'll have to wait longer and pay $10. Not a ton of money, but the wait longer might be a bother, and you might want to pay someone else $70, $80 in the aftermarket if this is a great game. Versus the other side of that equation is that it's not a great game, and it sells for half its value the way Island of El Dorado did. Now, I don't think that will happen to the point that I am not concerned about that at all. To me, I think it might sell for $10 less. $15 maybe. There is certainly a degree of risk here. But overall, if I had to make a guess, and it is a guess, this is not Nemesis where I can say clearly this is a good back, it's safe. This is not some, I'm not going to list names because I don't want to be offensive, but this is not some dinky Kickstarter where I could say, dude, you can get it cheaper later, no question. This is a tricky one because of the retail channels. They don't really engage in retail channels. So it's not one that I can clearly make a statement in either direction, and it will come down to whether the game is good. I have enough here to be certain it's not the Island of El Dorado. I don't have enough to be certain it will be amazing, it will be incredibly and great, but I think it will be. Especially if they continue to iterate, if they continue to listen to the player feedback and constantly tweak and adjust. And if they take their time, that's a big one. I'd rather they take their time and push off the delay, push off the launch another, not launch, push off the production, the shipping, whatever it is, another 3 weeks, not 3 weeks, 3 months or whatever it is, to make the game right. Take your time, get that rulebook right, ensure that you're listening to the bulk of your playtesters and not to one person who really, really thinks it should be a certain way. I don't have anything in mind when I say that. I just know that listening to your backers is always tricky. It can help you, but it can also hurt you. You have to know what to do with that one. So that's basically it. This is not a knock out of the park back. This is not a knock out of the park shouldn't back. This is one where I believe the risk favors backing it as opposed to not backing it. And especially in my case, because it looks like the kind of game that I will personally enjoy, I am letting myself fall onto the side of backing it. A little bit of a risk either way, but I'm intrigued by this game. I want this game. And if you want this game, I highly recommend backing it. Just because, well, everything I just said. I'm Alex Radcliffe. I hope you enjoyed this video. Alex from BoardGameCo over here. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found this one useful. A little bit of a mixed bag, I know, but I walked in thinking it was no way a game I was going to back, and in the end, I am 100% backing it, as of right now, at least. For my featured video of the day, I'll be linking to Solo Gaming by Things Get Dicey. Things Get Dicey is a channel by Paula Denning. She is Deming, not Denning, Deming. Things Get Dicey, Solo Gaming is a video that is immensely entertaining. Paula has her own channel with lots of little skits that are thoroughly enjoyable, and she also works a lot with other channels. She's been on Dice Tower, she's been on Watch It Played with Chaz and Rodney's new arrangement together. But Paula Deming is definitely a YouTuber that I highly recommend, and Solo Gaming is a video that really, speaks to people who are stuck at home doing quarantine and whatnot, and my daughter cracks up every single time she sees her talking to her stuffed animals. Anyways, once again, I am Alex. You can subscribe down below, comment, like, share, do all that stuff, and let me know if you are backing Age of Atlantis or not. Or better yet, let me know if this video changed your mind. I particularly for myself walked in with a heavy bias, and I am very curious if I was able to change your mind and get you to back it. I'm not saying you should back it if you weren't interested, but if you were interested but cautious, well then I'm a lot more intrigued as to where you are now. Until next time, have a good one.